Visit our YouTube channel at Max TV. Click on the subscribe button and be the first to get notifications on our uploads.
The halt on fuel subsidy, as announced recently by Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC), Malam Mele Kyari, has been described as long overdue. In their reaction, some economists and stakeholders in the petroleum industry have underscored an urgent need to fully deregulate the petroleum downstream sector and allow market forces to determine the price of petroleum products in the country.
The federal government appears to have finally acceded to demands by several groups within and outside the country on the need to jettison its fuel subsidy policy. According to the Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, the era of fuel subsidy is gone forever. Mele Kyari, who was speaking on a TV program, Moneyline with Nancy, said henceforth there will be no resort to either subsidy or under recovery of any nature.
Subsidy is zero. There's no subsidy. It's zero forever. Going forward, there will be no resort to either subsidy or under recovery of any nature. NNPC will play in the marketplace. We will just be another marketer in the space, but will be there for the country to sustain security of supply, which will also be at the cost of the market.
The subsidy regime was introduced in Nigeria following the inability of Nigeria's 4 refineries to produce at installed capacity. The government of then military President Ibrahim Babangida announced a fuel subsidy policy to subsidize the huge cost of fuel importation for Nigerians. Soon after its introduction, it turned out to be a colossal economic drainpipe in the country. For instance, the federal government spent over 1.5 trillion naira on fuel subsidy between 2018 and 2019. Sadly, however, businessmen and women with government connections became the real beneficiaries of the fuel subsidy policy. They had devised a strategy of buying refined petroleum products from local refiners at giveaway prices only to deliver same products to the government at officially approved prices.
Although up till now, I don't know how much I'm supposed to pay for a liter of fuel and how much government is paying extra to subsidize me. But all we know is that government is paying some money to some marketers, as subsidy. And that has really eaten deep into, government purse. So if government remove it completely and there is nothing like subsidy, I think that's the best way to go, so that this issue of talking about it over and over, and then some people just sitting down in the corner of their house bringing petroleum product, whether the quantity they bring into the country is complete or not, they collect money, from the back door as subsidy. So it is the right way to go, to remove it completely, so that we have a situation where market forces, can actually, determine both the quantity that will be demanded and the price finally.
For some Nigerians, the removal of fuel subsidy, as announced recently by Mele Kyari, should be taken with a pinch of salt for obvious reasons. First, Mele Kyari, who runs the NNPC, is not Nigeria's Minister of Petroleum and therefore not directly responsible for policy formulation in the petroleum sector. Secondly, this is not the first time the government would give an impression that subsidy has been removed for petroleum products only for Nigerians to discover that subsidy regime was continuing. When in May 2016, the pump price of petrol was jacked from 87 naira per litre to 145 naira, the impression given by the federal government was that the fuel subsidy policy had been jettisoned. Curiously, it went ahead with a policy that enriched only a privileged few at the expense of the ordinary people.
This has been a familiar argument over the years, and therefore, when we heard about this, I naturally got worried, because I know for a fact that the refineries are still not working. It is only when the refineries are working that it may seem sensible to contemplate petroleum subsidy removal entirely. Maybe government just wants to impress people the way we do here. And because they also know that nobody holds anybody to account for our statements and actions. When these statements are made, naturally, one has to take the statement with a pinch of salt.
Moreover, Mele Kyari's recent declaration on the removal of fuel subsidy contradicts an earlier position of Nigeria's finance minister, Zainab Ahmed, that the country was looking at a gradual phasing out of fuel subsidy as part of a comprehensive strategy to boost revenue generation.
We have to implement it in a manner that is both successful as well as sustainable. We are not in a situation to wake up one day and just remove subsidy. We have to educate the people. We have to show the Nigerian citizens what the replacements for those subsidies will be. So we have a lot of work to do, and we also need to understand that you don't remove subsidies large amounts in one go, that it has to be graduated, and the public has to be well informed on what you're trying to do.
Labour in the petroleum industry has also expressed their support for subsidy removal, but like the Minister of Finance, they hope its removal could be gradual.
Subsidy removal is good, but it shouldn't be in total. If the government wants to remove it, they should gradually put other infrastructures in place and gradually pull out from it. This would have been the best time.
In the midst of the confusion created by an official doublespeak on fuel subsidy, the onus is on the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency, PPPRA, to make clarifications on the actual state of the policy. In a bid to assuage marketers who are always at the receiving end of government's back-and-forth movement of pricing of petroleum products, the federal government has decided that the PPPRA will announce the pump price of fuel every end of the month for the following month, after working out the cost based on crude oil price and other parameters. In other words, if the import price goes up, the pump price will go up and go down when import price comes down. For some Nigerians, however, what is needed in the petroleum sector is complete deregulation.
Government has no business fixing prices. That's why we don't have private refineries. Right now would be the time to deregulate. Deregulation basically is to make sure that this is the kind of refined product we use in this country, and that's what must come in. And that's what the inspection companies are certifying at the wharf. So they can come in through anywhere. Cocoa Port, Warri Port, Port Harcourt, anywhere. Calabar. And if that happens, it will drop the price drastically because nobody wants to bring a product and be paying demurrage. There will be competition. And then in that way, you scrap PPPROA and then FEP. Scrap these bodies because we don't need them. If you do that, I can tell you we can sell petrol right now, PMS for 30 or 40 naira per litre. If you do that today. But I don't know the problem with the government interest. Today is the only NPC that is importing. They are the only people paying subsidy. So how much they are using to import, we don't know. How much the subsidy is, we don't know. They are the regulators, they are the marketers, and they are the distributors. I mean, where does that happen?
Let us allow demand and supply to rule the market. Let market forces determine prices. Let every petroleum marketing company sell their products at a price that they can market and be able to attract a clientele.
The recent slump in oil prices, occasioned by the COVID-19 outbreak across the globe, has dealt a heavy blow on the Nigerian economy. In March this year, the federal government took drastic steps to reduce its oil benchmark in the 2020 budget from $57 per barrel to $30. Owing to paucity of funds to sustain the 2020 budget, the government had taken further steps to slash it by 20%. The implication of the current cash crunch is that the government can no longer fund the phony fuel subsidy scheme that has cost the country trillions of naira in just a few years. Consequently, there's a renewed move to license artisanal refineries in the Niger Delta to ensure products availability and income generation for the country. Although the federal government in 2016 promised to legalize and support operations of artisanal refineries with an establishment of modular refineries across the region, there was no meaningful attempt to drive the process to a logical conclusion until recently.
One way of doing that is to ensure that these people are also helped by some of our scientists to modernize, the refinery so that we reduce, negative externalities completely. We can also put them in cooperatives, and then bring in some other people that can invest in those refineries, so that when the people are there, they will protect it because it's their own. They are part of ownership, and then two, they can now produce and refine crude oil and give us the byproduct which we'll use to run our generators, to run our cars, and then life will become better. They will earn income, and then the product will be available for people to consume. And if we produce excess, we can also export them outside for us to earn foreign exchange.
One of the goals of the recent decision to integrate operations of artisanal refineries in oil production is to reduce crude oil theft, which also constitutes a major drain pipe in the Nigerian economy. Considering that local refiners depend on stolen crude to function, the federal government has been urged to devise means of addressing the root causes of economic sabotage in the Niger Delta. Despite being the largest producer of crude oil on the African continent, Nigeria has for decades depended on massive importation of petroleum products to drive our economy. While the nation's 4 refineries are left to rot away, other refineries owned and operated by privileged Nigerians in neighboring African countries have been in brisk business over the years. The scam around the fuel subsidy is said to have been perpetrated by a powerful cabal in the system that President Jonathan could not contend with when in 2012 he attempted to bring it to a halt. For President Buhari, who prior to his election expressed misgivings about the policy but later went ahead to implement it, this is an opportune moment to put a final stop to a policy that has left the Nigerian economy in dire straits.
Inside the Niger Delta,